case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barreiro's Top 5 at 5. Brought to you by Gutter Helmet of Minnesota. Never clean your gutters again. Learn more at gutterhelmetmn.com.
So we come to find out your tease was too good.
Yes.
To the point where Laval texts you or calls the hotline? Called you to say, did the Wild make a big trade? And the answer to that, unfortunately, alas, is no.
Wild big trade. Never heard that in the same sentence.
That's true.
We do go here.
Time now for the obligatory Kevin Fallness Minnesota Wild mention.
It didn't go well for the Wild last night.
Race off left wing corner on the forecheck. Rossi able to dig it free. Knocked it around for Faber. 7 seconds left. It comes away at Boldy. Up top to William. Got a hustle on his backhand. Spiked it back down low. Kaprizov can't center. And the Wild run out of time.
Yeah, L in Carolina, 4-3 your final, but reinforcements are on the way with the breaking news that Zuccarello is in against the Islanders tonight on Long Island. He's playing with Rossi and Kaprizov, like that top line. Johansson and Tarasenko each move down one line. Also, Danila Yurov, welcome back. Jones and Pitlick are out, and Jesper Wallstedt in the net for your Minnesota Wild tonight against the Islanders. That's at 6. You'll hear it right here on the Fan after we're
Goalie
done.
controversy? Who knows?
Short term,
sure. There could be, yeah.
I've always been a Wallstedt guy.
Who's to say? So will this change everything for the Wild and for Kaprizov?
That's the hope. The hope is it balances it out a little bit more.
Right.
And Kaprizov will be able to, with his buddy who he's friends with, and they gel well together, him and Zuccarello, and then you give Boldy the freedom to maybe play with Eck and a Johansson or someone else on his line, and you can spread the love a little bit more than they have recently.
How stupid was I to pick the Vikings? Am I going to regret that? Well, I picked
Yeah, you did.
the Lions last week, and that didn't work out either.
What's stupider, picking the Vikings or picking the Packers?
It's a good question. At this point, who's to say?
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. You were saying?
So it has the potential to maybe not change everything. It was a little
well, you got to hope
there.
it helps a little.
And that's what we've been waiting on this whole time.
Yes.
So hopefully, if not tonight, in the near future, it changes and turns things around. Your Wolves, they are in the NBA Cup tonight. That's at 7. You'll hear it on the iHeartRadio app, the Timberwolves channel, against the Jazz at home. Your thoughts?
Well, somebody told me that the Jazz represent the perfect trap team or trap game right now, that everybody had picked the under before the season started on victories for them, but they've already surprised several teams who weren't paying attention, and that if you don't pay attention and you don't take them seriously enough, you'll find yourselves with an L. The hope is that now that this is Anthony Edwards' second game back, that he will be a little bit more acclimated and a little bit better into the mix. There's a million ideas going on around changing the starting lineup, bringing Nas into the starting lineup, moving Jaden to the bench. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I do know this, that if you continue to go with DiVincenzo in the starting lineup, you can make an argument for that. The problem is, in doing so, you weaken the bench, right? That's, I think, just among the issues facing this team, where they absolutely need, I think, 2 of the 3 relatively inexperienced players to force the hand of the head coach to play well enough when they do play that he's got some things to think about. And that, on a consistent basis, has not happened yet or even close. And as we talked about first segment of the show, we've got 3 teams in this town struggling defensively, and the Wolves and the Wild are at the top of that list. The Wolves are not close to what they've been doing, what they've done at their best defensively, and they might be worse as a rebounding entity than they've ever been, at least since they got good as a team. And what the answer to that is, I don't know. I mentioned on, Guardsy and I do a TV show called Enough Said, which will be on late tonight, I think after sports on Fox 9. I don't know the exact time, maybe 10:30-ish. That the Celtics, in the preseason, their head coach, very unhappy with their defensive rebounding. His edict in the preseason was, if you allow your man to grab an offensive rebound, you are out as of the next stoppage in play. And he was trying to send a message or convey the notion we really have to, dig deep and drill down on not allowing offensive rebounds. God forbid if the Wolves, if Finchie would have done that during the Knicks game, it would have been a revolving door of players, almost start to finish, because New York had over 20 offensive rebounds. And to me, I always view that's defensive rebounding should be part of how you establish and identify good defense. And their rebounding is a real problem at this point. Big time problem, especially when Rudy's out of the game, sometimes even when he's in the game. So the obvious question is, do they have the pieces to smooth things out? It's a long season. We've learned that the hard way before, but it feels very unsettled right now in Timberwolves land.
If that would have been the case, you would have heard the obnoxious substitution horn about every stoppage of play.
True. Exactly right.
There are 4 Vikings with statuses going into the game this weekend. Theo Jackson is questionable with a concussion, although he did practice fully today. Aaron Jones questionable with a shoulder/toe.
Yeah.
He was limited today. And then Okuda and Josh Oliver are out. Those are your injury statuses. Everyone else is either fully practiced or not injury related with vet rest.
Well, Lavelle brought up Jones, and I thought he did play. He looked fresh last week before he got hurt. And so you have that ongoing issue of being reminded that at his best and at his freshest, he still injects an element that I don't even think Jordan Mason can inject. And so best case scenario for any quarterback, but certainly the kid, is he's got all these pieces around him, including Jones. But the question is the same as it's always been on Jones. Can he stay healthy? And the early signs are not real good. So we'll see where that goes. Questionable, right? Is what you said he's listed as of now?
Questionable. He was limited.
That means it could mean he could play, but then is he the same? You're better off sitting him a couple of weeks. I don't know, but he's back where he's been a lot, not healthy.
And the Vikings knew that going into this.
They did. You have to know when you make that move. That's right.
Yep. Thursday Night Football, I don't know if you caught any of it.
Oh, I tried not to.
Ugly game.
Yeah, it really was.
The 8-2 Broncos.
Yes.
I still can't believe it.
No,
and I get
a lot of people can't.
I understand not having a good day because I try to defend my club and saying that they just didn't have a good day. But against the 2-7 Raiders, and you only score 10 points at home, you get the win. We're happy for you, but
yeah, it was bad.
They didn't look like an 8-2 team.
No, I was talking about if the Bears beat the Giants on Sunday, they'd be 6-3. I don't view them, or wouldn't view them, as a legitimate 6-3 team. It's hard to view the Broncos as a legitimate 8-2 team. Now their defense is real, it appears. Their offense is really up and down. The QB has been surprisingly effective at times, to the point where you say, well, that might end up being a good draft pick. And then under pressure yesterday, he was hideous. He was absolutely horrible. So I know that the Broncos are not, I think, going, if they keep anywhere near this level, even if they have a gaudy record, they're not going to be taken all that seriously as being a significant playoff threat. This felt like a throwback Thursday night game to the days when it seemed like every game was hideous.
Yeah.
Because we've had actually some better Thursday night games more recently. But this one
probably
was,
pitched a fit.
Oh, my God, this one was bad. There's no question about that. And it wasn't, I don't think it was just good defense at all. It was really, really bad offense. And Vegas, I thought, like everybody, I liked the idea of Pete Carroll being back in the league. But we're seeing the limits of what he can do, because I think they have some talent issues there. I don't think their quarterback situation is very tenable long term either.
The Fan and 2 Men in a Junk Truck want to give you a shot to win bonus bucks to the National Cash Contest at KFAN.com. Keyword is money this hour. Keyword money, KFAN.com. Keyword money.
Lots of texts coming in. I forgot to get to one that was for Laval, but we'll get to as many as we can, and then we'll prepare for Ben Goessling. A lot of texts regarding our gambling controversy and discussion earlier that devolved into something that had nothing to do with the subject at hand. But when you're a gambler and that's all you care about, then you're going to bring the subject to where you want it, whether it had anything to do with what we were talking about today.
Head over our contest page for your shot at a pair of reserved seats to an early screening of The Running Man in theaters November 14th. Enter today, KFAN.com, keyword contests, KFAN.com, keyword contest. I
just retweeted a Mike Tice tweet it appears, he's got a new podcast previewing NFL games each week and has had very good guests on it. I think he had the quarterback whisperer. I think he had KOC this week. So if you follow me on X, you can take a look at the retweet and maybe watch part of his conversation, Tice's conversation, a former Vikings head coach with the current Vikings head coach going into a very significant game for both the Vikings. And you can argue, again, if you make predictions on the basis of the desperation factor alone, then you would pick the Ravens, because the Ravens, they had so much slippage when their number one quarterback was out. They really need this game to get themselves back. Will you check the Ravens' current record for me while I also look at a couple of other
Ravens are 3-5.
Yeah, 3-5. So again, if they fall at some point, even with Lamar, they fall too far behind out of 500 or under 500, their margin for error gets reduced. So they're definitely more desperate. Although on the other hand, the Vikings lose, they're back to under 500 at 4-5. A lot of texts. This came in while Lavelle was on. This is from Clayton out of Rochester. He says that Lavelle was on with Nordo a few weeks ago, told a story about how he lost a bowling ball down in Florida at Twins spring training back in the Gardy days. You know this story?
I think I was there for that.
He said years later the long-lost bowling ball resurfaced, and the Twins called him saying they found it. The work that was put in by some unpaid intern for the Minnesota Twins to find the ball has to be fascinating. Does that bowling ball have more strikes left in it than the Twins' bullpen arms? Oh, it was a long way to get to the cheap shot, but I admire his patience and his tenacity and his willingness to let the story breathe. Regarding our gambling discussion, idiots will try to make an argument about betting on farts when it comes to money. Dan, you and Royce are exactly right. O-line only has to move the wrong way by 1 foot to allow the sack. Young college kids just by nature think they're invincible. Win a time or two, and the endorphins get moving. Then the losses start coming. Gamblers forget they don't build the Taj Mahal in the desert because the odds are in the customer's favor. Hundreds of billions of mafia money made by numbers on 5-cent bets to start. Nowadays, you just start with $5. What's wrong with the argument that when it's legal, it makes it safer is it fails to account that it's an app that's going to have an algorithm, which I feel make it inherently more addicting, and it's on a phone, which is always 5 feet away at all time. These texters might be as defensive as the gun nuts are when you tell them they can't bring an AK-47 into a Burger King. Dan, I do not need gambling to get by in my day-to-day. I do enjoy sports betting and responsibility while in other states. I should say I do enjoy sports betting responsibly while in other states. I also like watching sports without having anything on the line. The fact that there is an abrupt spike in athletes getting involved gives me a not-so-great feeling going forward on how I spend my money. City Streets guy writes, good gambling rant, no notes. And this is coming from someone who's bristled a little when you were talking about this topic a year or two ago. I'm in the pro sports gambling, but not a sports gambler myself camp. But it's clear there's some real fallout from the ubiquity of sports betting. And I'm nervous about where this goes in the future, even if I think sports betting should exist in a vacuum. Clearly, the system needs more checks and balances, and I'm burnt out with the endless betting commercials. Hate to break it to the sports gambling bobos, but the more scandals that break, the lower the chance betting will ever be legal here. For those that have to do it, Wisconsin is not that far away. The other thing that occurs to me is if you are heavily into betting, don't you want to see this policed as much as possible because of the possibility that you lose money on a bet that was fraudulently set up? I would think you, of all people, you got more to lose in that regard. Eliminating player props, and 75% of those concerns are not as big of a bigger problem. I agree. We've talked about that a couple of weeks ago as well. Dan, ask the vets who give you a hard time if they want their bets to be lost when a player fixes the game in opposition with their wager question. Ask them that question. Mo from Wrigleyville via Chicago. Gambling has ruined sports. I hope they don't legalize betting in Minnesota. Where did it go from there? I hope they don't legalize betting in Minnesota. I'll say again, I have no dog in that fight. I have not been a major resistor of it coming here, but I still don't understand what I got from a lot of the gambling community that, well, in the light, if you make it legal, for example, for college players to bet or for anybody to bet, then there's an even greater chance that that it's less likely that bad things are going to happen. It's already legal in lots of places. Just because it's not legal here doesn't mean it's not legal in many other places, and we're having more issues with gambling in more sports than we've had in a long time. So that logic does not even, I think, add up. Dan, according to Google AI, aardvarks are not naturally aggressive, but they will defend themselves. Hold on. There's too many texts coming in here right in a row. Let me scroll down. When threatened, their primary defense is to escape by digging a burrow or running away. But if cornered, they will use their sharp claws and powerful legs to fight back against predators, including humans. Dan, betting with a bookie would still be illegal. The better example for your argument, which I share, is if a college player, quote, manipulated their performance, unquote, in order to allow their buddies, guys in the dorm, to make easy money on a prop bet, for example. Well, there are many examples. And if we've learned anything through the last 3 or 4 years, it's that we did not have the creativity or the imagination to anticipate the ways in which the system might get gamed and the way people might try to gain advantage. I think that's what we're learning, and that's why I think there's stuff out there. My guess is there's stuff out there right now that we haven't thought of yet because we haven't caught up with the creativity of guys who are making it their business to find ways to manipulate this system as it becomes larger and larger, and the amounts of money become larger and larger as well. But the issue today, and that's why I'm still confused why it went sideways, had nothing to do with, there was no rant about, and by God, there should never be legalized gambling in the state of Minnesota. It didn't come up at all. I'm beginning to think Blakemore might have a point that these folks might rival the defensiveness of the pot community. I mean, there's great similarity in it where you're not even discussing what we're talking about here because you are so paranoid and so defensive, I guess, about that given issue. But one thing I will be pretty adamant about, I can't tell you what moves you to watch a sporting event. And if part of what moves you to watch that you can't enjoy a sporting event if you do not have money on it, I can't tell you that that's not true, because that may well govern what you pay attention to and what your high is. But what I can tell you is there are a lot of people who don't need it and have never needed it and will never need it as well. And I sense sometimes in the gambling community, that's where the real arrogance is. Like, well, there's the idea of, I mean, are you kidding me? Winning a bet, that's the ultimate high. Maybe it is for you. But you're delusional if because it's the high for you, it must be that the people who don't do it simply are missing out. There's no more arrogant position than that. My position is live and let live. If you want to bet, smoke them if you got them. I don't care. I really don't. And you have never heard me on this show rant or come out foursquare against the concept of legalizing betting here. Like with pot, what I have said is, as it becomes a bigger and bigger part of the culture, we should be able to explore the ramifications of it without then being viewed as you're a hater. You can't have it both ways. If you want it more available, if you want it more plentiful, we have a right, the wider culture, to pay attention to the ramifications of doing it. And the blowback that might be associated with doing it. And that's, I think, where the pot community and the gambling community share that same level of defensiveness. It's like they don't want to hear about that. I don't want to hear about that because it kind of muddies the waters a little bit. Well, it's our waters, too, because we end up sharing in all this. And in the case of betting and these sorts of scandals, those of us who care about sports are affected. Because, believe it or not, integrity is supposed to have something to do with what we're doing. And as I mentioned earlier, now it's even hitting the ultimate fighting community, which is not my community, but also indicates that there are a number of ways in which this thing is getting bigger and bigger. Bottom of the hour break, Ben Goessling will preview Vikings and Ravens. We'll get his view and his prediction, which is already up, I think, via StarTribune.com on Sunday's game. That is next.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
It's brought to you by American Pressure.
6 o'clock is our out time today. Minnesota Wild hockey is the reason. And generally, Lavelle joins us about now. But with some scheduling issues, he joined in the 4 o'clock hour. And Ben Goessling is with us to wrap things up now via the Connecticut Water Systems Hotline, brought to you by, as always, Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. I believe, sir, today was Asante Samuel visit day here. He's making, it's either 5 or 6 stops, if I'm not mistaken. Do we have any inkling how it might have gone? Any sense of where we are, how aggressive we might be? What do you think?
Well, there's certainly interest. I think there is, going to be a push to get him here. It will probably come down to how everybody feels, whether it's the Vikings or the Packers are in there, the Steelers are in there. He's coming back from that neck injury, so a lot of this will probably come down to how each team feels comfort-wise with him being back on the field and what they see the role being. But I think Kevin O'Connell said it today, he's always liked him, and I think there's a belief that he would fit in nicely here. He's been more of an off coverage corner and probably would fit in a lot of the things they like to do. They like to play their corners off in some of the zones. I think that's something that they would be able to plug him in and do. And it sounded like the medicals were yesterday and then the on-field stuff was today. I think there's going to be an effort to get him here. If everybody feels good about the medicals, then it'll depend on, what offers come through and how it compares with everybody else. But he'd certainly have an opportunity here, and I think there's genuine interest in trying to make something happen if everybody feels good about the fit and the health of the player.
And refresh my memory on the significance of the injury, whether that might be still a question depending on doctors and physicals and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, he's coming back from a neck injury, so that obviously is a significant thing, and they have to figure out, I think he had spinal fusion surgery in April, which you hear players do that, but that can be a dicey thing where players that go through it, sometimes it's one hit in the right place can be a pretty significant, possibly catastrophic thing going forward. So a lot of this comes down to how comfortable each team is with his prognosis and what they feel comfortable taking on in terms of risk. I mean, that's a decision that probably comes down to the individual teams and to him and his agent to some extent. But yeah, that is a significant one to come back from. I think that's part of the reason the medicals are so important here, because there may be some teams that feel differently about it than others, and it could come down to who says, yeah, we're comfortable enough with this, and we're going to take a run at it. So a lot of it, I think, will come down to that just because of the injury and how significant that is.
On the other hand, he's only 26. That's so if he's healthy, if this works, and you say we're not talking about a guy, like a 33-year-old cornerback or anything like that. Played for the Chargers, obviously, starting in 2021. For 4 years. So we'll see how that goes. I think the Packers and Bears within the division are also visits. I think he already visited the Packers yesterday, and I think it's the Bears early next week as well. So he's playing it. He's milking it, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting that there are that many teams that are all fighting with each other in the NFC North, both in the standings and then for the same player.
Yeah.
it is. It's again. It'll probably come down to who says, "Yeah, we're comfortable enough, and we're going to meet the financial demands." Because I would imagine he's going to try to get what he can. I think you're probably talking about a 1-year deal, but
yes,
it's the kind of thing where if you get him in your building, you probably get the first crack at bringing him back. The fact that he's 26, if you feel comfortable with it, I have a feeling teams will say, we want a corner in our building that's proven, that's still on the right side of kind of the age curve of things here. So, yeah, there will be legitimate interest. It just comes down to the comfort factor with that injury, and everybody may feel a little bit differently about that. And, it's that risk tolerance thing for everybody. But, yeah, this one, because you have all of these teams competing with each other that need cornerback help, the Vikings certainly are in that group. Yeah, kind of an interesting wrinkle for a mid-season.
Yeah, it is.
Possible transaction. It adds a little spice to it, that's for sure.
There's no question about that. Your preview and prediction is already up via StarTribune.com, and you ultimately pick the Ravens in a close game. You have it 30-27. How close did you come to picking the purple, and what ultimately got in the way of you giving the Vikings their second straight victory?
Yeah, I thought pretty hard about it. I mean, I think they will have opportunities to keep J.J. McCarthy clean against this pass rush. They blitz a lot, but they don't get home a lot. In fact, I think Nnamdi Madubuike is still tied for the team lead in sacks, despite the fact that he hasn't played since week 2. So it's not a group that puts a ton of pressure on quarterbacks, despite the fact that they try to throw a lot of things at different teams. So if the Vikings can protect J.J. McCarthy, he may have the cleanest set of pockets that he's had in his, to this point, short NFL career, which is not saying much because he's been under a lot of pressure. But I think if you can get him a game that he has time to work, that could give him opportunities. It's the things that concern me are this secondary the Ravens have is very good. They add Alohi Gilman, the former Chargers safety, which allows them to put Kyle Hamilton, the first-round pick from 2022, in the slot. I think that changes some things with some of what they want to do, putting him with Marlon Humphrey and the corner group that they have, which is pretty strong. And then on offense, the part that ultimately made it hard for me to pick the Vikings is just they have struggled a lot with mobile quarterbacks this season.
Yeah, that's true.
Jalen Hurts not run on them, but he extended a lot of plays to 7 seconds and hit some throws down the field. Obviously, Caleb Williams had a productive day running the ball. Justin Herbert, I think, ran for 60-some yards in that game and then was able to extend some things. So Lamar Jackson being able to make plays downfield, forcing those corners, and they're going to play without Jeff Okudah again. I just think asking those corners to do what they're going to have to do with Lamar Jackson able to get out of the pocket, not to mention the run game that they have with Jackson and Derrick Henry. I think the Vikings played well enough against the run last week that they may be able to carry some of that forward. I think they feel good about some of the progress they made there. But I just think it's one of those where Jackson playing the way he has, especially if there's some opportunities to pick on that secondary with broken plays, I think that's ultimately what tips it. I thought pretty hard about picking the Vikings. Ultimately, I guess did what I did last week, picked them to cover, but picked the other team to win. I was wrong on the ultimate pick last week with the Lions winning the game. We'll see what happens this week. If they cover, I guess that's something. But, yeah, I ultimately picked the Ravens largely because of Lamar Jackson.
Well, you can also throw in, for whatever it's worth, the so-called desperation factor that if the Ravens lose, they fall to 3-6, and they're in serious trouble at that point, probably, right?
Yeah, they are. And that's a team that won 12 games last year, obviously a team that has been a contender in the AFC for a long time, and I think expected to be close to the top of that division again this year. And they are kind of staring into the void a little bit here, where if they don't win this game, like you say, they're 3-6, the wild card picture gets awfully tough to come back, and the division starts to slip away. So I think it's one of those games where they have a lot on the line, and they are relatively healthy. I mean, their injury report didn't have anybody on it until today. Now, the context that we need to insert there is the stuff that happened with Lamar Jackson a couple of weeks ago in the injury report. So grains of salt are probably applicable to some of these things, but if they're that healthy, I think that's significant as well. So it's a group that can do a lot of things behind a pretty good offensive line. They've got Patrick Ricard, the 300-pound fullback. They'll try to play bully ball. They'll try to wear the Vikings out. It'll be a question of how good that run defense is if they're able to do what they did last week against Detroit. But, yeah, I think the fact that this group is as desperate as it is, and it's a team that's been a contender, I think there's going to be a pride factor that may ultimately play into this game as well. I think it's going to be a jacked-up environment at U.S. Bank Stadium on Sunday. People are going to be excited after that win. But, it'll be a tough test from a football perspective for the Vikings, I think.
You write about the Kyle Hamilton factor. It's a good one. It's juicy. It's an interesting angle. Tell our audience in a little more detail why you brought up his name so prominently.
Yeah, he came up a couple times. I feel like there were a few interviews this week that people talked about how good he is, and it's a local angle factor, I guess, because he was the 14th pick in the 2022 draft. And if people remember, the Vikings had the 12th pick in that draft. So rather than staying and picking, whether it would have been Kyle Hamilton or Jamison Williams, who ultimately went with that pick, or Trent McDuffie, the corner, some of those guys would have been options. They trade back 20 spots in the famous trade with the Lions, and they take Lewis Seen 32nd in the first round. So obviously they were in the market for a safety. They liked the idea of adding one and then make that trade to also try to accumulate more picks. But Kyle Hamilton has turned into one of the better safeties in the NFL that also plays a lot of nickel. The Ravens put him in a lot of different spots and move him around quite a bit. So a player that could have been in Minnesota, I think a player that a lot of fans, at least, were bringing up saying, boy, the Vikings really would benefit from him being here. And certainly the early returns on his career have been impressive enough that it would have been interesting. And as it is, he will be part of a secondary that he'll get some matchups with Justin Jefferson when he's in the slot, and we'll probably get put in a number of different spots where the Vikings have to be aware of where he is just because he is that versatile and can do a lot of different things. So there's a little bit of a butterfly effect to that trade, which we've talked about a lot. But in this case, it's a player they might have had that's going to be one of the big factors they have to deal with, at least when they have the ball on Sunday.
Is B-Flow a big spy guy when the opposing quarterback is as elusive as Lamar is, or is he likely to consider that sort of thing, given, as you mentioned, the inability we've had dealing with quarterbacks getting out of the pocket and making some plays with their legs? What's our approach in that sense?
Yeah, I think he will use a spy. I mean, they did it with Caleb Williams. In fact, the play that Blake Cashman got hurt with the hamstring in that game was he was trying to chase down Caleb Williams when he got out, but they used Cashman as a spy there. We've seen a little bit of that in recent weeks with Jalen Hurts. Certainly they were spying there, and I think even Justin Herbert a little, they did it. I would expect they will use one on Sunday, whether that's Cashman, maybe Van Ginkel a little bit, but yes, I think they will try to have somebody in that spot because you have to worry about that with him. And certainly he is the NFL's all-time leading rusher among quarterbacks already, and he's still like 27 years old. Yeah. So he will be, in some cases, almost like a running back. I think he's had, 700 or 800 yards at least almost every season in his career, even eclipsed 1,000, I think, once. So he is one of those players that you have to have a plan for. It's not just let's rush him. It's got to be let's rush him with a plan to deal with the contingencies for when he does get out of the pocket or he steps up and finds space, but in the middle of the pocket to go straight up the field. So, yeah, I think they will use a spy. I would expect it's either Cashman, maybe Van Ginkel. I could see probably not Metellus. Cashman would be my bet that they'd use in that spot, and then you try to rush him from different places. But they will have to have a plan for him, and I expect that probably will include spying on him in a few spots. Are we
going to be able to run to help 9, or are we just going to, like you say, just try to throw the ball against a team that has not had a particularly outstanding ability to get home on the QB?
Well, I think they will. They'll have to try to throw a fair amount, and I expect they will. But testing that secondary is, I think, a concern, and being able to run the ball against this group would be helpful. It's just always that question of how much are they going to commit to it. The fact that Aaron Jones sounds like is going to play certainly helps. I mean, I talked with him in the locker room briefly today, and he said he had the shoulder taped up and had his toe taped up in practice and felt fine. And he has played through enough things in his career. He didn't seem to have much question about whether he'll be able to do it. So I think having him is a big factor. Having him in pass protection could also be a big factor. And then just as a receiver, he probably gets the ball in some of those situations. But yeah, I think they have to try to run because this secondary has not given up a lot. And there are enough veteran players that know how to make plays on the ball that if J.J. McCarthy has some moments where he puts it into harm's way, they may get themselves in trouble with turnovers. So I think taking care of the ball and being able to extend drives, I think even times where if 9 is running a little hot, I think sometimes the run game can be a nice way to say, hey, hand it off here. There's a little bit of an easy button. I think they will lean on those things. I think it's wise to do that, and I would expect I'll try to do some of that Sunday.
Thanks, as always, for the help. We appreciate you, and enjoy the game Sunday. We'll chat next week.
All right, sounds good, Dan.
Thank you, sir. That is Ben Goessling, brought to you by Standard Heating and Air Conditioning on the Sunday high noon game. There'll be no Gopher football Sunday. I assume there'll be Packer preview.
Believe it or not.
What time will that be? Will that be right before us?
So that'll be at 8.
At 8 o'clock.
Yep.
Then a 1-hour edition of sermons, 9 to 10. Pregame show for the Vikings game will start promptly at 10 a.m. and then opening kickoff just about noon. You're a night game this week, right, Green Bay?
Monday night.
You got the Monday nighter. That's
Eagles
a nice matchup. Yeah, that's a really nice matchup. I assume the Bears are also a noon game within the division. They're taking on the Giants. That's also on Sunday. So we will have, I don't know, might be some Hoosier Hotline on Sunday for Sunday sermons because the Hoosiers are taking on, it's the trap game at Penn State. Dangerous.
If you want.
Opponent.
Because Packer Preview is right ahead of you. Mm-hmm. You could just tell Cynic and stick around for a little
Hoosier Hotline. There it is. Yeah. I know I think he's actually been there at least once for a game this year, if I'm not mistaken.
He's got a kid out there.
He's got a kid, exactly it. So that will be, I'm sure we'll have more Vikings conversation by then if there's anything new. It is interesting to hear that Goessling thinks there's a good chance, even though Jones is listed as questionable, that in his conversation with him, it sounds like he's going to give it a go. Will he be as effective as he looked before he got hurt last week? I don't know, but he definitely helps. Helps 9. There's no question about that. We're out at 6 for Minnesota Wild hockey. That's why we're out a little bit early today. I want to remind you that if you missed any portion of the program, it's all podcastable, of course, and will be available to you sometime after the show today via the free iHeartRadio app. Guest lineup today included, unfortunately, Carl Gerbschmidt at 3:30 as part of the pick segment. Lavelle, a lot of baseball conversation, especially with the unveiling of the new manager. That was at 4:30. We got into we ended up in a gambling discussion that got ugly. Lots of good texts on that. And then Goessling joined us at 5:30 to give us one more preview of the Vikings Ravens game. I was about to say Browns. And the spread, we went with 3.5, right, in our picks. I've seen it as much as 4. I don't know how much movement there's been. And nationally, when I look at all the pundits, I can't find anybody picking the Vikings. I might be the only jackal who's picked the Vikings this week. And I may regret it. I don't deny it. It doesn't feel logical, but I just have a weird feeling that they might win this game this week. So, by the way, for seasonal boost here at the Fan, we certainly could use it. We always like it when the local team is in the mix. You at least want them to be in the mix, and a victory over the Ravens would most assuredly put us over 500 for the first time in a while and would put us in the mix.
I've got a site that has all the major betting, like you can look at lines from every company, basically. The lowest is 3.5, but I see some as high as 4.5.
Is that
for
right?
the Ravens? Yeah. Wow. So not a lot of love in Vegas for your purple.
No,
for the other purple.
Definitely not. And what's the spread we went with on your game, Packers-Eagles?
We went with 1.5, I believe.
Packers favored.
Packers favorite.
Despite what took place last week against Carolina.
Every line I'm seeing is either 1 or 1.5 for Green Bay.
You're still in first place, though, right?
That is correct.
For the moment.
No other context needed.
And the Vikings are still in last place, if I'm not mistaken.
That is also correct.
But Lions and Green Bay did kind of come back to the pack, no pun intended, this last week as well. So it looks like it is going to shape up to be an interesting race. And as I mentioned, the Bears are in position with a home game against the Giants to get to 6-3. But I don't believe it's a very legitimate 6-3. But part of that is you're the last place team, you get the last place schedule. And to a certain extent, they're at least taking advantage of much of that schedule as well. All right. Oh, we win tonight, hockey? Do the Wild get it done tonight? What do you think?
Hopefully the addition of Zuccarello and Urov changes everything.
And the goalie?
Wallstedt's really good as well.
That's the reason to pay attention to it right here on the Fan all by itself. Thanks for watching. Thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the bit of winter headed our way this weekend, I'm told. And we will talk to you on Sunday morning at 9.
Wear pants, not wear pants. You can do whatever.
So,